What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons, Newsom, you rock. Now let's get into today's Precon upgrade with Recon Revenant. And guys, this deck's kind of a mess. There is a very high density of instant and sorcery cards, and they don't really synergize with our commander beyond the surveil mechanic. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a lot of instant and sorcery cards in the graveyard, and then a big commander that has nothing to reanimate because you haven't cast very many creatures. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the instant and sorceries with permanent cards that synergize with our commander and the surveil mechanic instead, giving the deck a lot more reanimation targets because after all this is a reanimation deck, and that's overall going to add a lot of consistency to the deck and just make it feel like it works because it does work. Another thing we are going to go out of our way to do is add some bomb reanimation targets. This deck kind of has one or two cards that are like, okay, I guess that does kind of impact the battlefield once it hits the battlefield, but I really want to focus on those very impactful reanimation targets that they're going to hit the battlefield and then become a problem almost immediately. So without further ado, let's get into what we cut and added to the deck. Before we get too far into today's video, I would like to thank today's video sponsors, Into the AM. Now guys, I'm in love with these shirts. Honestly, the logos, super vibrant, very unique designs, and additionally, you can't feel them on the inside of your shirt, which is one of my pet peeves. Additionally, they're just really soft and they taper at the sleeves, which now I don't know why every shirt doesn't do that. I'm unreasonably obsessed with it. So if you guys want to upgrade your wardrobe while getting a discount, you can use discount code DECKTECH at checkout. And again, guys, I would not be supporting this company if I was not also a customer. I can't stress enough how awesome these shirts are, and I'm just incredibly impressed with the product overall. With that being said, let's get back into today's video. I want to start out by saying Doom Whisperer and Eye of the Duskmantle is this deck's bread and butter. The fact that we can use Doom Whisperer as a solid way to surveil, and then Eye of Duskmantle as a way to cast those spells for essentially free is broken. The only problem is there's no life gain in this deck, so we're going to change that. Gary's going to be a perfect inclusion here. Not only does he gain a lot of life, he can also be an alternate win con in the deck. Demir Strandcatcher coming out in the clue set, so this is going to be an easy add as well. Not only does it surveil a ton, additionally it's going to draw some cards. Eloise also seems like a no-brainer here. We did add a couple sack outlets to the deck and a couple creatures that want to die and get reanimated, so she's going to be perfect. The Grim Captain's Locker, just a solid way to surveil, and then additionally giving those bombs escape for 4 can cheat a ton of very impactful creatures into play. Seer of Stolen Sight, not only does this trigger off treasure tokens, but also whenever creatures die, and it's just going to be another solid surveil outlet. Cemetery Tampering, at the end of the day, we want to fill our graveyard, and surveil does it kind of consistently but slowly at the same time. So Cemetery Tampering is just going to speed up that process a little bit. Tygam Sidisi's Hand is amazing card advantage, not to mention it's pretty good removal too. We're going to end up with a lot of dead cards in our library, so now Tygam can put those cards to good use while again rifling through our deck pretty fast. Sivrus is honestly underrated. The fact that we can potentially draw 3 cards a turn is busted, and if they end up in our graveyard, we're fine with that as well. Windfall is also going to make the cut because not only does it fill our graveyard, it additionally fills our opponent's graveyards. Remember, Rise of the Dark Realms is in this deck, so we need to fill our opponent's graveyards for that big game ender. Whispering Madness is also pretty solid. Remember, our commander does have flying, so it's got a pretty good form of evasion on it, so the fact that we can cast Whispering Madness on our commander and just have a solid wheel effect every turn is going to be pretty powerful. The Ancient One comes down really early, it mills us, and then late game we're just going to have an 8/8 beater to smash people in the face with. Altar of the Wretched does a couple things in the deck. Not only does it draw a lot of cards, it mills a lot of cards. Additionally, we can sacrifice it to the things that want to sacrifice artifacts and then return it back to our hand, so that's pretty busted. And then we can flip it over into the Wretch to Bone Mass just for a massive creature late game. Ruthless Technomancer, this is something that we want to use late game to get a ton of mana, and then additionally it can act as recursion. Archpriest of Shadows, more solid recursion in the deck. Silas and Rin to get those artifacts from our graveyard to our hand. We also have Goldberry in the deck. This is just a cool interaction. Getting rid of that finality counter is going to be pretty important. That way we can reanimate something, get rid of the finality counter, and then sacrifice it to reanimate again. That's going to be pretty important in a recursion based deck. We also run Nesting Grounds for the same thing. It's just a solid land that's going to remove that finality counter and make it to where you can do the whole looping stuff through the graveyard for value thing. Silent Blade Oni's just a fun little recurable card I added to the deck. It's just going to be fun to steal our opponent's spells with a massive ninja. Consuming Aberration, again, not only is this going to be a massive creature, so stuff like Ruthless Technomancer or Altar of the Wretched are going to love this. Additionally, it just sets us up for that massive Rise of the Dark Realms late game to win the game. Sepulchral Primordial, since we added some more ways to mill our opponents, Sepulchral Primordial is going to be pretty useful now just to take our opponent's best creatures out of the graveyard. Meteor Golem, this one's just really solid. Put it in the graveyard. All we need is a power 4 commander, and then we can reanimate this and get rid of any permanent we need to. Visir Seer, just another solid sack outlet. Swiftfoot Boots to protect our commander. Moving on to some of the pricier includes, we have Mesmeric Orb, again another solid way to mill everybody very fast. Toxrill is going to give you immediate value in this deck. Since you do recur your stuff on end step, it's kind of hard to get that, but Toxrill gets us there because it's going to immediately trigger on our opponent's upkeep, and then the next, and then the next, and by then they're not going to have a board state, and we're going to untap with a lot of slugs and a very commanding board presence. Kakusho, the Evening Star, again, just another way to gain a lot of life and deal a lot of damage at the same time. Out of the Tomb, one of my favorite mill cards, this starts milling you incredibly fast. Let's move on to the cards we cut. Price of Fame, just very expensive for what it does. Mission Briefing, Deep Analysis, Otherworldly Gaze, Consider, Ephira's Dispersal. Then we have Discovery and Dispersal, Curate. All of these cards are getting the axe just because they don't synergize enough with our commander. Again, we want permanent cards in this deck. That way we always have recursion targets. The fact that a lot of these are instant sorceries and they don't give us any value beyond the surveil aspect of them is why they're going to get cut here. Dream Eater's going to see a cut. We just cut a lot of our instants out of the deck, so now having flash and keeping mana open is just not something we want to do, so this is going to be an easy cut. Whispering Snitch, the bang for buck just isn't there for me. Lazav, the Multifarious, again, we're trying to cheat creatures into play. We're not going to try to turn this guy into copies of them, so he's also going to be an easy cut here. I've just never been a fan of these effects overall. Ransom Note, just not a fan of this card. Shriekmaw, I guarantee you 9 times out of 10 when you need a removal spell, you're gonna look and that creature's going to be black. I've cut Shriekmaw from so many of my decks that really want that evoke ability just because it seems to always appear whenever I need to specifically remove a creature with black in it. Brainstorm, not really having a bang for buck there for me as well. Vizier of the Many Faces, this was the worst of our clones, so I went ahead and cut it for something a little more synergistic. Thoughtbound Phantasm and Demir Spybug, I'm really not a fan of these surveil payoffs, so I went ahead and cut them as well. Grave Titan is a card I won't even entertain unless we're using extra combat steps, and even then, there's probably better creatures we could be playing, so he's going to get cut here. Final Word is definitely a powerful card, but this deck kind of just turned into a sorcery speed Demir deck, so cutting this seemed pretty easy when we can shove something a little more impactful in there. But if you like being sneaky and playing on your opponent's end step, this is definitely a solid card for you. Then we're going to get rid of 2 different lands. For the non-budget cuts, we're going to cut Sphinx of the Second Sun. Since we are adding Toxrill to the deck, that's just going to be better than this. Chernal Serenade, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to only get 1 activation off this, if not 2. If there's 3 activation, that's kind of insane. But again, you're probably only getting 1 to 2 activations off of it, and then it's just a very expensive recursion spell. So while it's pretty fun, it's going to get cut here if we're adding those more impactful options. Master of Death, again, for the non-budget ads, there's a little bit more powerful things we could be doing than this. Watcher of Hours, kind of same thing, suspend, and then you just get a 6/6 beater. Not really a fan of that. And then we are cutting the Phyrexian Metamorph. That's going to do it for the upgrade guide, guys. So go ahead and leave your suggestions for upgrades in the comments down below. Together, we can all make a better deck. With that being said, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.